All right, lesson 10, last lesson in this pathway. You made it. So, this is all about how we write book recommendations because there are so many books out there. How many times have you walked into a library or been looking through your teacher's classroom library and thought, oh my gosh, I just have no idea? Maybe not, but if you're like me, you certainly have. It can be really hard to know where to start. So, getting recommendations from other people is a great place to start. But in order to get recommendations from other people, we have to be able to give recommendations. So, that's what we're going to work on. We're going to practice making them, which is just basically giving advice about books that we have already read. Um, if I write it, everyone can read it and then they can choose to read the book or not. It's not like, oh, if they read it, they like me. If they don't read it, they don't like me. No, it's just like, hey, I liked this book. I hope you do too. Maybe it's not for you, but I liked it, so I want to share it. So at the end, you're going to be writing your own book recommendation. So, a couple things to keep in mind. You are going to want to include the important information. If you just say, oh my gosh, I read this book about a guy who rides a bike and he's with his brother and they go to so many places. Is anybody going to be able to find that book? Probably not. So you're going to want to include the title, the author. If you know what the genre is, that's helpful for sure, if it's fiction or nonfiction. And then if even more specifically you know it's a historical fiction or a mystery or realistic fiction, that can also be helpful. But for sure the title and the author are important in a book recommendation. Then you're going to want to give a summary, but don't spoil the ending because there's nothing worse than someone being like, hey, read this book. It's so great. And in the end, this happens. It's like, oh my gosh, now why am I going to read it? Because I know what the ending is. So just tell generally what happens, but don't tell the ending. You're going to want to include a personal opinion, what you liked about it. Did you like the characters? Did you like that you got to learn about certain historical events? Did you like learning more about red pandas? What did you like about it? Right? Because that's what it's all about. Is then someone can hopefully connect to that and think, oh, they liked that about it. Do I like things like that? Okay, it might or might not be a good book for me. If you can include evidence from the text. So, an example, if you say you liked it because it was funny, then maybe give an example of it's so funny. This one time, the main character squirted milk out of his nose when he was hanging out with his friends. Right? Like that might draw someone in and help them to understand what you mean by it's funny. And then give them a reason for reading it. So, why might someone like it or want to read this book? So, I might say, okay, I recommend the book Wonder by R.J. Palacio. It is a realistic fiction book. So, well, technically it's a memoir, but it's written more like realistic fiction because it is based on a true story, but it's more like a realistic fiction book. It's about a boy who has his face is disfigured because of a certain thing he was born with, and he's had a lot of surgeries, but he still looks different than pretty much everybody else. So he's been homeschooled, and then Wonder is about the year that he goes to a public school for the first time and has to learn how to make friends and navigate all the things that happen in fifth grade. I liked it because it gets a chance to learn about somebody who's not like me. Okay, I've never had this special gene that made my face disfigured, so I had to get a bunch of surgeries. I like reading about the friendships that he learns to form. His name is Augie or August. I like that he connects with a boy named Jack Will, who they just get into, they have adventures together, like the time they do a project about mummies. He has a dog named Daisy, and I have a dog, so I liked reading about the relationship he has with his dog. So I think if you enjoy reading realistic fiction and you want to find out what happens to Augie when he goes to public school for the first time, I think you should read this book. Okay? That wasn't perfect, but that was a recommendation for a book that you might like. I chose that one because I love reading that book to students, but a lot of students have read it or seen the movie, so I don't read it to students anymore, but it's so good. So if you haven't read Wonder, seriously, go read Wonder. But that's just an example. I gave information, I gave the title and the author and the genre. I gave a summary, but I didn't tell you about the ending. I didn't tell you too many details. I told you what I liked about it. I gave you an example, and then I said why you might like to read it. Okay? Let me see if I can think of another one. So I recommend Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, written by Rick Riordan. It is a fantasy book because it's fiction. It includes magical things. Percy Jackson finds out that he is a demigod. So he is half human, half Olympic god, like think Greek gods like Zeus and Aphrodite and all those old gods. And so he finds out that he is half god and he has to figure out how to save the world and work with his other demigods before the world ends. I liked that it was really exciting. There was a lot of action to it. I thought Percy was really relatable because he struggled with not having a dad and not knowing where he belonged. So that was a good connection. I liked learning more about Greek gods and goddesses. I thought that was interesting. So example of when it was really exciting. So he had to fight a minotaur. So this giant half man, what is a minotaur? It's this giant creature with like these huge horns. So he had to try to take that down with his special I guess powers, but to defeat this monster. It was an exciting scene. So if you like fantasy, so magical things and exciting adventure books, this could be a book that you would enjoy. All right, so that's another example. So you are going to go write a recommendation as your assignment for this lesson, and then I would encourage you to read the ones that people write because you might find books that are interesting to you. Now, maybe some will be too easy, some will be too hard, some won't be interesting to you, but I would encourage you to read the recommendations that your classmates give because it can be a great way to find books to read this year. Good luck!